Alright guys, Newcastle United have just beaten Leicester by 2-0 in a pretty convincing win. I think that's definitely fair to say. Newcastle were superb, to be blunt, because first half they should have had at least 2 or 3 goals. How it went in at 0-0 at half time was ridiculous really. Longstaff should have had a couple, Joe Linton could have scored, Almiron could have scored. Pretty much everyone could have scored, Wilson as well, and yeah, they would have been gutted not to be in the lead at half time. It was just a display of complete dominance from Newcastle, and Leicester offered pretty much no threat in the first half. I think they only had one shot on target until about the 65th minute in the game, and that was when they made a couple of subs for like an attack, bringing on Vardy and Iheanacho, who in fairness did make a difference. I just don't rate Pacy and Daka that much, to be honest. I think he's definitely got ability, but he doesn't have this natural instinct, I don't think, to know when to time a run. Because as soon as Jamie Vardy comes onto the pitch, he creates himself 2 chances. He definitely should have scored the first one. Second one was a little bit harder, but he knows where to be at the right time. I don't think Pacy Daka quite has that ability to the level that Vardy does, because that was the only time in the game where chances started to come for Leicester City. Like when they had made the subs later on, and by that time it was too late because they'd already conceded. Second half Newcastle continued the pressure. Kept playing really well. Joe Linton, I thought in particular, was superb. Almiron too, and the goal came from a poor piece of Leicester defending, because a lot of Leicester's defending in this game, it looked impressive at times, but there wasn't a lot of structure to it. It was more just try and throw as many shots in front of the ball, as many players in front of the ball to block the shot, as possible, and eventually, if Newcastle time a passing move correctly, eventually they'll get in a position where they can score, and that happened with Dan Burn from a throw-in down the left-hand side, and it was just poor defending from Leicester. Timothy Castagne and Daniel Amate in particular. Amate for me is not a Premier League defender. I think he can do a job like for a couple of games. He's one of these utility players. He's never played centre-back in his career up until last season. So, or it might be the season before actually, but you shouldn't be, having him in your starting 11. I don't think he's a utility player. Does a job in multiple positions, whether it be sitting midfield or right back or centre back. Should never be your starting centre back throughout a season. He's just not at that level really, and it was just poor defending from Leicester. And I will give some credit to Danny Ward, to be fair, because Danny Ward had to make quite a few saves throughout this game. Some really good saves, especially in the first half. And the second goal is just a counter-attack where Almiron's played perfect, I think it was Almiron, perfect through ball to Joe Linton, who finished it really well. And yeah, just a brilliant performance once again from Newcastle. And Leicester, towards the end they started to get a couple of chances but didn't take them. Just not good enough at all really from Leicester for how dominant this performance was from Newcastle. And there were just so many brilliant performers in this team for Newcastle. And in truth, this game, Leicester were very lucky to get away with 2-0. I thought it could have been 5. I actually had a bet on this game and came reasonably close. I had 1-0 Newcastle, Callum Wilson score, and there were a few other things like corners and yellow cards, and I got them correct. So had Callum Wilson have opened the scoring for Newcastle, I would have cashed out and got a reasonable profit from that. But unfortunately that wasn't the case. But the only players in this Leicester team I felt as though had a decent game and decent pushing it is I thought Jose Perez, I got a bit mixed between Perez and Perez then. I thought he had a reasonably good second half. He started to create a couple of chances. So, but other than that, maybe Tielemans didn't do too badly in midfield and Harvey Barnes had his moments. But other than that, there really wasn't much else in that Leicester team, with Danny Ward obviously making a couple of saves. But yeah, for Newcastle, I just thought Guimaraes, Willock, Joelinton, Almiron, all superb. And yeah, they're through to the semi-final of the League Cup. I think they got to the semi-final a few years ago, actually. I can't remember who they played. It might have been the COVID season, I think. That does ring a bell, actually. And yes, obviously that's a big thing. Man United are also through, beating Charlton 3-0 in the end, 2 goals in stoppage time. So that's a potential opponent in the semi-final. And the other 4 teams being Nottingham Forest, Wolves, Man City and Southampton. So I'm going to predict that the 2 semi-finalists tomorrow night that go through will be Man City and Forest Wolves. I'll go Wolves. So that means Newcastle's potential opponents in the semi-final could be the 2 Manchester clubs or Wolves. I'm pretty sure who they want out of them, given that Man United are in really good form right now and Man City are Man City. So it's not going to be easy for Newcastle to win this competition, but I'm sure they'll give it a good go. And yeah, Newcastle tonight they look back, because I think over the past 3 games, maybe since in fact actually in all their games since they played Leicester in the league, I think they haven't quite been at their best. I think they've only scored 1 goal in the last 3 games, and that was in the 2-1 loss against Sheffield Wednesday. The 2 games before that were 0-0. And to be fair, they did put in a good defensive performance against Arsenal, but tonight they looked back to their best in terms of going forward as well, because Almiron, Wilson and Joelinton were all linking up really well. And in fact, even Alexander Isak came off the bench with a few minutes to go, so that's another good sign. He did have 45 minutes at the weekend as well, but got subbed off at half time because I think that was all he could manage, really. But yeah, we'll get into some player ratings. Start off with Newcastle, the home team. Nick Pope, I'll give a 6 because he didn't have a lot to do, but anything he did have to deal with, he dealt with well. Trippier and Shaw, I'll give 6s, solid performances. Botman, I've given a 7. I thought some of his passing was superb, and yeah, really solid game at the back. Dan Burn, I've also given a 7, took his goal brilliantly and had a solid all-round game. In truth, Newcastle weren't troubled that much, to be honest. I think there was a couple of moments where Leicester got down the left-hand side and caused a couple of problems, but other than that, there really wasn't a lot. And then midfield, I've given Longstaff a 6. He played reasonably well, but I think he just missed too many chances. He could have had 2 or 3 on another night. That first one, especially right in the first minute of the game, that had to be scored. And yeah, he did have a couple of others where he possibly could have done a little bit better. Guimaraes, I've also given a 7. In a similar situation, his chances were a lot harder. They were shots from outside the box, but he could have had a couple in the first half on another night if he'd have just kept them on target, because he struck both of them really well. Willock, I've also given a 7. This is what you get from Joe Willock, and consistently, to be fair to him, lots of energy, and yeah, just a brilliant athlete in midfield for Newcastle. Perfect Eddie Howe player, I think, because he's been at Newcastle 2 years now, because he had 6 months on loan before he joined permanently. And in that 6-month loan, he obviously went on that amazing scoring run. I think he scored something ridiculous like 6 or 7 games in a row, which is incredible for a midfielder. And yes, since then that goal scoring run has not been there at all. But he's he's still been a very effective player for Eddie Howe, and I think under Steve Bruce at the start of last season it just wasn't working, and since Eddie Howe's come in a year ago, he's properly become a perfect fit for this Newcastle team. So yeah, I've given him a 7. Almiron I've given a 7 as well. Again, just brilliant on the ball, brilliant setup for Joe Linton's second to kill the game off, and yeah, another really good performance using his pace and dribbling ability. And it's weird with him in Saint-Maximin, because I think Eddie Howe coming into Newcastle sort of well, it's obviously really benefited Almiron, but it hasn't really benefited Saint-Maximin, because Saint-Maximin I think is suited to having his team play deep, and he brings the ball up the pitch. Whereas Almiron, it seems to suit him a lot more being in a very ball possessive side where he can get the ball in dangerous areas. So yeah, he's playing really well at the moment. I'm sure you don't need me telling you that. Callum Wilson I've given a 6. I think out of the entire Newcastle front line, he was probably the quiet one, but he still had an okay game. Just wasn't involved that much. He did have a chance in the first half, which again, on another night, a player of his finishing ability probably could have scored. And my man of the match I've given to Joe Linton. Again, brilliant. Like he almost covers 2 positions in this Newcastle team. He's the main option out on the left, but also can come in the central and do the work of a central midfielder, which is brilliant for any team really. And he has an amazing partnership, or not partnership, but just like sort of understanding with Joe Willock of like how they can sort of swap positions, because sometimes you occasionally see Joe Willock come out on the left. So yeah, and he took his goal brilliantly and was just constantly involved in this game. So yeah, I'm giving him an 8, and I've given him man of the match. But now on to Leicester. Danny Ward I've given a 6. Again, made some good saves in this game. Not a lot he could really do about the 2 goals. So yeah, 6 is fair. And then 3 of the defenders, Castagna, Fass and Thomas, I've all given 5s, because they weren't horrendous. They yeah, maybe 5s are a little bit harsh, but they yeah, actually, come to think of it, that first goal, Castagna in particular, I think could have done a bit better, but they definitely didn't do enough in terms of protecting the goal while also getting the ball to the midfielders, I felt, or keeping hold of the ball anyway. And Amate I've given a 4, because I thought in both goals he was poorly positioned. So yeah. And then midfield and Didi I've given a 5. Yeah, just looked a little bit off the pace. Over the past 18 months or so, injuries have really sort of hindered him. And yeah, he was a cracking player before that, but he just can't seem to get the consistency at the moment. Tielemans I've given a 6. Had a few creative moments which were, a rarity for Leicester in this game. So yeah, I've given him a 6. Or Brighton I've given a 5. To be honest, I didn't even realise or notice him at any time in this game. So yeah, automatic 5 really. Perez and Barnes I've given 6s, because they had their moments. Perez in particular, I thought towards the end of the game, and created a couple of chances. And then Daka finally I've given a 5 as well. Just not good enough at being a predator. I'll use that word. It's just not good enough at getting in the right areas to get himself chances and get shots off on goal. So yeah, I think a 5's fair for him. But anyway, Newcastle performed brilliantly. Thanks for watching this video, and I'll see you next time.